Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is April 23, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Paul Thompson. Paul, where in the heck are you calling in from?
I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Unconditional love.
Wow, that is a great answer. I get the word love all the time, but I don't get unconditional. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Uh, it has to be my ears, the sound, music, in all kind of forms.
Yeah. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I think we have a desire and a need to reach out to one another and communicate. We have a need to express ourselves and on a deep level, hear other people express themselves. So I think that's probably why I think.
Do you think this need or want to collect or gather information is more innate or more invented?
I think it's more innate. I think it's again a need that we have to express, a need that we have to feel what other people are expressing.
Perfect lead in. Next question is, do thoughts create emotions?
Mm, that is a very deep question. Uh, I could probably say, yeah, I would think. I think it works either way. I think your thoughts can create certain emotions. I think when I think about certain things, I feel a certain way, but I think emotions can also stir up thoughts in your head. I think it's synergistic.
Good word. Paul, fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
Feel something deeply.
Yeah. Can humans think without language?
Yes, I definitely think coming from an artistic point of view, if I could say it, I wouldn't have to play it. I think we're moved in a certain way. Um, there's some of my favorite music in the world. Miles Davis. I I wish I could describe how it makes me feel, but I can't. I can't use a word or anything that comes close to how it moves me. So
Yeah, I agree, man. Live Evil is my lifeblood. It's like when I hear that, it's like I don't want to hear the all the sessions it came from. It's a 2 album set that became my lifeblood in 72, and I can turn it on and the thing will go through my head for hours, like,
yeah,
without playing it. It's like an amazing thing. How does that work?
yeah,
We don't want to know. It just, we know it works.
absolutely.
And the word play is so more important that you said, if I could say it, I wouldn't have to play it. There's a cliche that goes, if you can't say it, sing it. If you can't sing it, dance it.
Mm,
So Chomsky says the language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Paul, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
wow, that's a very heavy question, Jerry. Well, I can think about this in a musical context because this happens. Communicating with other musicians on the bandstand and playing, I find that I need to listen harder, if that
Yeah.
makes sense at all. I had to. You have to listen harder because it's there. There's going to be something there that somebody understands. We're just not listening hard enough. So, in
Yeah.
that kind of context, that would be my answer.
Amazing answer. I appreciate that. It's key. Your observations of humans in general, are we more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
Um, I think, again, in my experience, in my own personal journey, um, I think we think too much.
Yeah,
Um, I think we think way too much. We put too much thought into things, and we don't allow ourselves to feel as much as we should.
yeah,
And as an artist, that's been my journey. The older I get, is the more stop thinking, just feel, just happen.
yeah.
So I think we think too much.
Two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
Wow. Um, I'm gonna say instinctually, I'm gonna say no. I think I think I think feeling would be more a function of the soul, and because I can do some really thoughtless things. I know how thoughtless I can be. And sometimes I want it. I want to be thoughtless. I don't want
Yep.
to think. So yeah, I'm gonna say no, it's not.
Second Turing question is, can machines think?
Hmm. We're getting close to that point, are we? um, I'm gonna say no. I think if you can do a task, a single task or a few tasks over and over again, that's not a thinking process. We all know that when we've been in the midst of doing something that is relatively thoughtless. I think we are getting to a place where machines are being taught the building blocks of thinking, but not yet, I'll say, not yet.
Yeah. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Wow. Um, uh, you know what? Can I say both of them? Um,
Sure.
I think happiness is so important in life. But as I continue to find happiness, I want to figure out why
Yeah.
I'm happy. That's the meaning. That's with music that I like to break down. It makes me so happy, and my instinct is, why does it make me happy? What is inside of it? What is inside this piece of cake that makes it so delicious? I need to figure that out. I think the happiness comes first, and then the meaning comes thereafter for me.
Yeah, I got it from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He said, interestingly, that happiness doesn't necessarily last, meaning tends to last. So
Mm,
it is a lot of these either or questions. Of course, they're both and we can't separate them. But because we invent words like meaning and happiness, then we think we can separate them.
right, right.
Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we more so creating it?
Hmm. Well, who was it? Was it Descartes that said, "I think, therefore I am"?
Yep.
Um, I'm gonna say I think I don't think that the brain creates consciousness. No, I think it's there. I think we detect it, and it's there because I sense this feeling of consciousness in a lot of different kind of beings, more than just humans. So,
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
mm, I'm gonna say speed of light because I think even the quickest human thought is slower than our deepest instincts. You know, knee jerk reactions, instincts are much quicker.
Yeah. The poet Audre Lorde said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Colleague, Yvonne Rainer, a colleague of hers, said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Uh, wow. Okay. And I'm thinking about this again in a musical context. Um, every great artist, and what I do, I'm a jazz musician. My goal is to not only use the master's tools, to use Charlie Parker's tools, Miles Davis's tools, but my goal is also to create my own tools at some point. I have to learn how the master used their tools, break it down, and then eventually the goal is to create and craft my own tools so that I can build my own house, if that makes sense.
Dude, it makes more sense. You got it going on. That's Harold Bloom, Anxiety of Influence says you absorb your influence, then you abandon them. It's like good luck. You know, but it's also George Lakoff, neuroscientist. He says you use the existing tools and you invent new ones. So
Mhm.
you really laid it out. You're smart. What new toy do you suggest?
New toy?
Yeah.
Um, I think right now for me, a jump rope is a really great toy. Getting out there and being active, getting outside. It's really inexpensive and it's hours and hours of fun.
Jump rope is perfect. That is a cool toy. I've dabbled in jump roping. Rope a dopa. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Um, I worry about how many things. First of all, I worry about how we treat each other,
Yeah.
how we communicate with each other in this world, especially right now. How we treat our neighbors, how we talk to people, how we greet them, um, the thoughts in our head about them, how we relate to one another.
Yeah,
Communicating with other human beings is something I worry about at night.
super. Marshall McLuhan learned from the poet Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might be able to learn to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So, Paul, I asked you the question McLuhan probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Oh, because we don't want to pull up the rug and look what's underneath it. You know, my mother always used to say this when you have to clean the house, the first thing you have to do is lift up the rug and see how much dirt is under there and clean it out. And the artist is holding up a mirror, good and bad. And we have to look at the bad and take in the bad. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to face the bitter truth, the hard stuff, the uncomfortable stuff. But that's definitely why some people, it scares some people. Good, great art is truthful and honest and beautiful and scary as hell. So I think that's probably why.
That is good. Go to Miles. You got to hear this. This really great musician in Arizona. He was playing this was 20, 30 years ago. He was playing like a rock video by Miles. Like he had, some rock video. And it scared the shit out of his daughter. And he sadly said he would use it to discipline her. He says, okay, if you're not going to do that, I'm going to put the Miles video on.
Oh my gosh.
And to us, we like, Miles is that's the range is so huge. I mean, you can make you sleep in like a lullaby,
Yeah.
it just calm you. But you can know that shit could be scary too. But he felt so guilty to use Miles as a disciplining tool.
Well, he had everything. He had everything in his music. Everything. Good, evil, love, hate. It was all inside that music. So
Yeah.
that's hilarious though.
Do artists have moral obligation?
Oh yeah, for sure. I absolutely. And it can be a macro kind of obligation to, the larger community, but it could be in your household, or with your family. Yeah, I think on many levels. It could be on a very personal level. It could be on a very big level, depending on who you're playing for, who's listening, who's watching you, for sure.
Yeah. You know, Paul, a little tech thing. Your volume's a little low, and I was wondering either if you can turn up your volume or you can go to the settings at the bottom of our screen and hit settings, go to audio,
Yeah.
and then raise your audio level a little. It might help because I'm just worried. I had this happen the other day, and then the whole video, the person's audio was a little low. So you see settings, and then
Yes.
you hit audio.
Well, it might be because I have my AirPods in. I can take them out. Hold on. Let me see if this makes any difference.
Well, however you want to fix it, but I think if you have your audio up a little, it'll be better for the entire video.
How is this? Is that any better?
That's a little better, yeah.
Okay. I just took the AirPods out, and I'm going straight into the computer now. If that's any better.
Actually, it's not better. Did you turn the audio setting up?
Let me see. Hold on a second. I apologize.
No, that's all right. No worries. It's just that, you know, the last time I didn't tackle it right as we're going, so I thought, well, why wait?
The problem, okay, automatically adjust. Here we go. Okay, how's that? Is that better?
Did you turn it all the way up?
Yeah, it was clicked automatically adjust. Okay, I have it all the way up now.
That's good. Let's go from there. That's good.
Okay.
So, are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Old ideas, definitely. Change is inevitable.
Yeah.
Definitely old ideas because we made a lot of mistakes and it seems like they always keep coming back.
Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Sure. This is a funny one. So my mother had me when she was in college, and she took a year off. And after a year, I lived with my grandmother. My mother went back to finish her college degree. She was the first one in our family to get a college degree. So when I was very small, one of my earliest memories was my mother taking me back to her sorority house, probably 3 or 4 years later. It was a musical memory, in fact. They made all of the pledges. I guess this was a time when you know, young ladies were pledging. She made all of the pledges line up in a big line and sing me to sleep.
Wow.
I'll never forget that. I can't remember the song that they did, but they did some kind of lullaby. I remember them all in a big line singing me to sleep. And then the next morning, I remember waking up and seeing these same girls furiously cleaning. And I didn't understand why. I remember asking my mom, why are these girls like cleaning up everything? I don't get it. I don't understand. So that was one of my earliest memories, was being sung to sleep by pledges and then seeing them all clean up the house the next morning.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Ooh, I'm going to say, because I can go either way, I'm going to say blessing. I think, you know, was it Ernest Hemingway, The Movable Feast? Was that him that came up with that phrase?
I'm not sure, but go ahead. What's the point?
The point is, we should collect as many wonderful memories as possible because they travel and we carry them with us into our later years. Really
Right.
precious moments. So
the movable piece, I see it's a metaphor. That's beautiful. Can you tell me someone within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
Wow. Thinking about it immediately was my grandfather had a very deep impact on me. And it was simply because he loved me. He loved me so much, and he was incredibly affectionate with me. And I was living my living situation at the time, I was living with my mom who was single, and she was kind of struggling through things, and she wasn't particularly the most affectionate person, and he was the one person in my life who always, he was so happy to see me, and he would give me a big kiss right on my cheek and tell me how much he loved me. And that meant everything to me, like him showing me love. And he was always, I was always so connected with him. He was a paralegal. He drove a big Cadillac. He listened to jazz. The first jazz I ever heard was his music. He was the guy that eventually I kind of rediscovered jazz, which was his music. And yeah, he was the first. It was true love from my pop, and and being around him, he had a huge impact on me.
Well, it shows love and jazz are two things that really come out of your presence completely. So then that was great, really articulate. Thank you. I appreciate this, Paul. What someone outside your immediate family? Same question.
Wow. And this can be, is this an early memory you're asking, or?
Again, you put in the context you want. It can be early, or it couldn't. It doesn't have to be. It's whatever you want to say, because it's a lot, to just
Sure.
narrow it down to one person briefly.
I had my best friend, one of my best friends growing up, is a really talented drummer. And before I ever played the bass, him and I became fast friends, and our weekends involved always watching Star Wars, always getting a pizza, and just listening to a lot of music. And he had a huge passion for music, and I played music as a youth. I come from a time where a lot of young kids had to take music growing up, and you were kind of given an instrument. I played trumpet, I played violin, I played piano. But when I met my buddy, his name is also Paul. When I met this guy, he was playing drums, he was listening to rock, and I kind of followed him. He was a prodigy, he could play really well, and he kind of invited me into the musical world, and I started playing bass, and he really facilitated, everything that's happening to me now with music and playing the bass, and he really shared his love of music with me, and I haven't looked back since.
Beautiful. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Yes. I was raised a Buddhist.
Wow. Do you pray?
Sometimes I do. Yes, sometimes I do. I don't. I'm not a practicing Buddhist right now, but that's a long story.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I would love for God to say to me, "Did you bring your bass?"
I love it. Love it when musicians go, "Let's jam, dude."
Yes.
Did you bring your bass? Yeah, I know you got one of those basses on wheels. It'll be easy to get it up to heaven.
Yeah, yeah.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Wow, that's heavy. I tend to think that evil uses people as a vehicle. I think I think even the most vile, misguided human being has some part of them that can have a connection that you can reach, that you can touch, that needs love. I feel like there's holes that people need filled, but I would never, I would never wish death on someone. I
Yeah.
would never wish death. I can't do that,
Yeah.
because I feel like we're all on the same most basic level, these human beings. So I feel like evil is uses people to manipulate
Yeah.
its doings.
Well, the real hidden question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Mm.
Coppola stole from The Mob and the Samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts, Paul. Basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I think that's totally valid and real in certain situations. For instance, the comments of a YouTube video can be one of the most painful things you'll ever read ever. And part of what I've learned to do is to not acknowledge those comments, because you give power to those comments.
Hello.
So in certain situations, or say someone is, acting rude to you. I teach high school kids, and they sometimes can go out of their way to try and to be rude to you, to affect you in a negative kind of way. And you have to stay steadfast, and it's absolutely true. You give power, you give absolute power to that negativity once you acknowledge it. But was there a second part to the question? Because
basically, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy?
You have to. I mean, I know this is a biblical quote, right? Love thine enemy.
Yeah.
You have to love your enemy. You have to reach out to meet them where they stand, because I think, first of all, they don't expect that. That's the most unexpected play. But you have to have sympathy. You have to have compassion, and you have to understand why someone is coming from that point of view that they're coming from. I'll give you an example. My wife and I, the most hated people in any restaurant are the people that walk in 20 minutes before the restaurant closes. And my wife and I were both working, and we didn't have a lot of time to eat. So we went out to some place, and we didn't know this. It was 20 minutes before they closed. And this waitress that seated us couldn't have been more mean to us.
Wow.
And it was just obvious. And I thought, let's offer relief here. So I left her a really great tip. And I wanted to write a little message, I hope your day gets better.
Yeah.
But only love, and this is another quote, I guess, Martin Luther King, didn't he say this? Only love can counteract hate. You can't defeat hate with hate. Only love and light. So that's the best way, I would say, to meet your enemy is with love and light and patience.
Yeah. Beautiful. Nassim Taleb says games were created to give the illusion of winning. In real life, we really don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. I told someone this and they said, well, villains don't think they are bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist, said, if a criminal gets caught, does he go, oh, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, oh, I did something morally and socially wrong? So it's a lot of prompts, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
Wow. This is interesting to ask me, because I teach public school kids 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I think we need to hold to some kind of standard of accountability.
Yeah.
I think accountability has to be present. I think we learn from accountability. But punishment and our forms of punishment have to be looked at. And I think they have to be adjusted. Because in the end, punishment, and I'm talking in a societal kind of way, punishment seems to affect a minority of people very greatly, and for various reasons, socioeconomic reasons. I think we need to look at punishment and what we consider punishment to be. But I do think with young people, I think accountability is something we all need to be taught in school. And it starts when you're young. So accountability is important. Punishment, not so sure about.
Yeah, I like that, because I also think conflict resolution should be taught, like accountability and that these are things we should be taught in school early on.
Yep.
James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Wow. Because sometimes I think the story teaches us a different lesson.
Yeah,
We go to the movies, we listen to music because of the
yeah,
story that's being told to us.
yeah,
Um, I will never, hopefully, never live in a world. Well, I'm sure of this. I'm never going to live in a world where if I want to eat an apple, then I'm going to go to a machine and type something in, and it's going to give me the synthetic equivalent of what an apple is.
yeah,
Um, but if I want to hear a story um, about that involves eating an apple and it gets to the point of teaching me something greater, it's a part of a story. So I've always considered the synthetic. Um, it's all an end to a means, you know. And we with our entertainment, it's become about more realistic and greater and bigger. But the point is always going to be, what's the story? What's the story you're trying to tell me? What's the message? What's
yeah,
the feeling you're trying to give me?
yeah.
But it's about the story, telling the story. So the other stuff, if you could watch kids in the second grade telling, if it's a great story, it'll compel you. It doesn't have to be anything more than that.
Yeah. Well put, Paul. Experimental filmmaker Hollis Frampton said, "Narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. Can you forget to die?"
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, as a musician, I can well, I mean, I'm thinking about being in the moment, right?
Yeah.
As a musician, I can forget everything. I mean, there's nothing. And how many musicians have died while playing? You know, I guess they forgot that the gig wasn't over yet, you know? Yeah, I can definitely.
There- There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, Paul, but that one you got right. In fact, it reminded me of Sonny Rollins, I mean, one of the greats. He would, after the gig, he would go in the back in the dressing room and keep playing. And the guys in his band would go,
Yeah,
"Dude, the
yeah,
gig's over." He says,
yeah.
"I'm still trying to work things out."
Yep,
That is like purity at its best.
absolutely.
So I'm curious if you can explain just briefly your tipping points on when you said, "I want to be a musician." You told us a little about listening,
Mhm,
and then you go, "Well, that's what I want to do." And then your tipping point of being an educator and also slash YouTube tutorial, teacher. I mean, that's sort of one and the same, but there's sort of three tipping points there I'm looking for. Where did it
mhm,
really kick over? That's what I want to do. That's my calling.
mhm. Well, each one of those, so when I was younger, um, I fell so in love with music so hard, so quickly. And so my formation as a musician, and I will say this, it's always a work in progress. You're always chasing the better musician down the road. You're always chasing. If I get to level 3, my eyes are on level 5 or 6,
No.
and you're constantly trying to get better and play what's in your head. Um, so I fell hard at about age 12, 13, and there was nothing you could have told me that I was gonna not, you know, you couldn't have told me at that age, "Oh, you're not gonna be a musician." Even my mother, my mother didn't support me. She was like, "There's no way. There's no way you're going to do this. You can't. This is
Yeah.
not feasible." And I said, "Watch me. Guess what? Watch me." But since then, the other, so I've been on this process, which has involved practicing and writing and trying to be better and playing gigs, and that will continue hopefully until I die. The educator thing was hard for me. It was when I met my wife. My wife is an actress, and she performs far less than I do because of the landscape of being an actor and being a musician. It's easier for me to play a lot of gigs.
Yeah.
She was the one who urged me to become an educator. She urged me to teach. And my attitude on that 20 years ago was, well, I'm a player. I want to play.
Right.
And the whole assumption was if you taught music, you weren't good enough to play it, you know?
Yeah.
And I quickly learned that teaching music is a part of the gig. It's a
Yeah.
part of being a musician. And if you can play a 2-octave scale, you have a
Yeah.
duty to teach somebody else how to play that 1 octave,
Yeah.
the first octave. So you can always pass something down. If you can play 2 strings on an instrument, show somebody else how to play 1. And so that's been my attitude. And over time, it's grown and grown. It's very much like the music, where I've learned how to do it more and more. And the YouTube thing, so I've been a teacher the past 20 years, and the YouTube thing, I started watching channels that I really loved. I thought Rick Beato had a really great, engaging channel where he's explaining things. I think Adam Neely has a great channel, and I thought, I think I can do that. Because they're talking about, these are their 2 stories. I think I have a different story. I think I have different music that I'd love to break down. And so I started doing it during the lockdown, during the COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
And it kind of evolved, and now it's kind of this ball rolling down the hill, and it's become the 3rd act. I usually explain that to people, where the playing of the music is the 1st act, which kind
Yeah.
of continues. The teaching of the music has been the 2nd act.
Yeah.
And then the YouTube thing has become kind of a 3rd act for me, which has been really exciting.
Yeah. Really well put, Paul. There's so much you brought up, but this thing about getting better. I have to tell you, bass player I worked with a little, but he's like super pro. John Humphrey played with Scott Henderson, Jean-Luc Ponty, Carole King, taught at MI Bass Institute. And I says, well, John, he could do anything. I says, what do you do? What do you want to do? What do you aspire to do? He said, to play better over the Charlie Parker confirmation changes. And I was like that. And we eventually did it, and I did the lyrics to confirmation are so cool. But it was just like, well, what do you do? How do you get better when you're so good? Like these kids on YouTube, they're too good. I can't handle it. It's like, I want a rough edge a little. I want a little, And then this whole thing about jazz education was like Clark Terry, isn't he sort of like one of the inventors? I mean, previously it was just a natural thing. You taught the youngin, but to make it a real thing, and that's the beauty. Jazz education has become a real thing. And, people, and now it's almost like, why go to college? You can just learn it on YouTube. So I thank you for just doing your channel so well. I mean, everything is like, how did you, I just have to go into the channel for a second. How did you learn to speak so articulately? And write these out? You can tell that these are scripted in a way, but they don't feel like it. I mean, I feel like it's scripted. I don't know. You could just be winging this, but are you reading your lines off your screen, or are you memorizing them? How many takes you do? How do you get it so it's just so clean and it's just clean is the best word I get. It's just like clean.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. I really appreciate that. Well, I have to say, it probably comes from being in a classroom in front of 30 kids trying to teach music history,
I
which is
see.
One of my classes that I teach, so I'm an adjunct, which means I'm not a full-time teacher. I'm not certified, but I teach at a special school, a performing arts school here in Pittsburgh, which, you know, kids can go to. They audition to get in, and they can study any kind of discipline they want. Like there's a dance department, there's a vocal department, visual art, and the teachers that teaches at this school are professional artists who are actually doing it. That was the
Right.
concept of the school 40 years ago, was let's
Right.
put this school together and bring in professional artists to teach. So one of my gigs at the school is teaching music history. And I know that the way I speak, my vocal inflection, I have to speak with clarity. When you're in a room with 30 teenagers, you have to be very clear, and you have to be very succinct, and you have to know how to raise your voice when you have to. You have to know how to get people's attention. And the most important thing I learned is you have to plan. You have to have a lesson plan. For me, like some people, I feel like some people on YouTube are blessed. They can put the camera up. I feel like Rick Beato does this. He puts the camera up, turns it on, and just starts talking. I cannot do that for my videos. I like to organize my thoughts. I have a script, and then when I'm shooting, I'll have my phone in my hand and I'll memorize 2 or 3 lines and then look at the camera and speak the lines.
Right. But did you learn screenwriting ever? Did you learn editing ever? You're all taught to write a script. See, this is the amazing thing. My friend Tyler Bartram does the great, really good Zappa tutorials. And it's like, you're a filmmaker. He goes, no, I'm not. He did it because of COVID. It's the same thing. He's like, I got a lot of time. I'll start doing this. But you guys don't realize you're filmmakers. That's what filmmaking is, what you're doing. And it's you call them, well, we're YouTubers. So it's like you just transformed the line. Filmmaking, YouTubers, same difference. But anyways, this is what a screenwriting teacher told me years ago. That a great film is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. A great film is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. So when you're writing a Paul Thompson composition, what role does intention play in the creative process?
Wow. Well, so my intention is to leave the viewer as excited about what I'm talking about as I am. I want to communicate that feeling of excitement and like I'm 12 years old again.
Yeah.
So are you talking about my YouTube videos or just like if I was playing music?
If you both, if you were writing a composition of music, you explain the YouTube. Now if you're just writing a Paul composition, just not a commission piece, you're just writing a song.
Oh, I want to give the feeling, and I want to disappear totally. I want it to be the feeling. All the music I've ever loved has moved me where I'm listening to it over and over and over again. And then at some point for me, it becomes, okay, what was that chord? What is happening here? Why is this affecting me like this? But I want it to disappear. I want it to, I don't want anybody to see any strings or any boom microphones or be analytical about, wow, what a great shot that was. I want you to be moved. Totally. I want you to be moved before any of that I enter the thought at all. I want it to be the work.
Yeah. That's totally the symbolist poets. Mallarmé said, don't paint the thing itself, paint the effect it produces. But Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your audience? Let's go to both then. When you're making your video and when you're writing your Paul composition, how much are you thinking of your listener or your viewer?
That's drastically changed over the years. I was really self-centered when I was younger. It became about being serious and not regarding the audience, and this is for me. And um, and that's grown. The older I've gotten, the better in terms of making music. The more I connect with an audience, the better I play.
Yeah.
The better it sounds to me. The more I acknowledge the audience. With the YouTube thing, that's also been a thing where I was trying to think about content and impressing myself. And it's become more of telling a story and speaking to people. So for me, the art is much, much greater when I can make a connection with people and present it and present it as communication rather than just something I'm trying to do for myself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that it makes a lot of sense because Ruth Draper said the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. That sounds good, but how do you do that, especially in a live setting? Like you're a live musician, you're performing live. How do you do that? How do you bring them up?
Oh my goodness, there's some very simple things, and I have to give credit to my wife because when she saw me playing 20 years ago, she pulled me aside and she would kind of tell me about this, and I wasn't noticing this. Look at the audience,
Yeah.
smile at the audience,
Yeah.
acknowledge the audience when they applaud, especially, and this is jazz, right? It's a commonly held perception that as jazz musicians, we can get on stage with sunglasses and we
Yeah.
don't have to look at the audience or even think that they're there. We're playing for ourselves. So for me, I have to look at the audience. I have to acknowledge them. I have to smile and be gracious and thank them. And to be honest with you, and this is something I've been figuring out in the last 5 years or so, if I can look at the people, if I can look in their eyes
Yeah.
while I'm playing,
Yeah.
it makes me play 100 times better than if my eyes are closed.
That is so cool. Go back to Miles. Ann Arbor Film Fest, Ann Arbor Jazz and Blues Festival in the 70s. We saw everybody. Miles, I'm a white, kid. I'm seeing
Yeah.
Miles and he spit on a roadie. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And then this guy, I eventually interviewed him. He did a documentary on Miles for radio. And I told him that, and he goes, "That wasn't good, dude." To me, it was just like, the black man lashing out. And
Yeah.
so Leonard Cohen has another good line about this too. He says, the only way you can sell a concert is to put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your performing live?
Everything. It's everything. No, it is literally everything. Vulnerability is the key to playing great jazz. You
Yeah.
have to be vulnerable. And I played a gig with a trumpet player who came down from New York the night before last. And we played, the second set was all free. He said, "Can we just play free? Like just free.
Yeah.
And so we played free and it wasn't all cacophony. We kind of found things.
Yeah.
But and when he was introducing everybody, he said, "We want to thank you for listening to us. This is very vulnerable what we're doing. To play free is very vulnerable, to put yourself out there, but that's where the magic happens. The
It
magic
is.
happens when you stand out on that ledge and you're peering over it and you jump. That's when the magic stuff happens, when you're vulnerable. If you play it safe and go, here's lick 1C, here's lick 13D, it's boring and predictable. And when you leap out, the net appears, like being vulnerable. That's exactly what you have to do.
Hey, Paul, you're really articulate, but how do you find the courage to do that? Where does the courage come from? Like what? The way your parents raised you, you got that on your own. There's some courage in it. You articulated, but you also said you did it. So where does that courage, where's the roots of that courage to know it and do it?
I think I have a lot of love. I think love helps when people love you
Yeah.
and support you. And my wife is one of the most important people in my life in that regard. And
Yeah.
my mother has been awesome my whole life, and my
Yeah.
grandparents. It's knowing that you have courage and support,
Yeah.
and I have a great group of colleagues and friends that I play with. I was thinking this last night. I played with some of my best friends. Isn't it great to have friends in any situation,
Yeah.
good or bad? It's great to have those people there that you know are going to support you and be sympathetic. And so that helps. It helps
Yeah.
being with people that are going to support you and let you take those risks. And if you fall on your face, they'll be like, "That's okay. Try it again." You
Yeah.
know. So love for me has made a lot of things possible, but also I'm kind of at the tail end of the age of there was a lot of racism when I was coming up.
Yeah.
A lot of it was still a time when when black musicians and white musicians weren't playing together a ton.
Yeah.
um and I had to walk into a lot of situations with just my music, and with people didn't want to notice anything else, and I had to learn how to speak musically with my art
Yeah.
and to say things, and to I had to do a lot musically with two or three notes, and I learned how to do that too. So
Yeah, well, finally we can get into music. So McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness, like knife and fork extend our teeth. The shutter in a camera is extension of our eyelid. Even non-tangibles say philosophy or religion's extension of consciousness. What does the bass extend for you? What humanness?
hmm I think the bass, well, first of all, it's I'm so connected to it in a way that I can't describe. When you find your voice, because it's my voice,
Yeah,
when you find your voice, it's like finding this thing that had been around forever that you're
yeah,
just now discovering.
yeah,
And the bass feels like that for me. But there's a certain discipline that you have to have in playing the bass, a type of organization that I love, and I'm a little OCD in that regard. I like the organization of the bass, the rhythm. I love how static it can be, and how when it changes, it's immediately noticeable. So the bass can be these beautiful, perfectly straight lines, and then all of a sudden they start to warp and become round and fluid. And I love that the bass can do that.
yeah,
And then and the bass can be this dark color underneath everything that you totally don't notice. And then all of a sudden it can become bright, and it's now in front of everything else. So it for me, personality wise, I've always been a really shy person growing up. I was really shy, and but I wanted to say something to people. I wanted to be this kind of, hey, everybody listen to me. So the bass is the manifestation of that. It's this kind of, I'm supporting everything. I'm in the back. Nobody notices me. But when it's time to kind of be noticed, hey, check me out. So it's my personality.
yeah. It's really good. It reminds me of Billy Wilder saying, make the subtleties obvious. Now, you don't always
Brilliant.
have to, but at the key point. And really, Ben Ratliff wrote a book on Bill Frisell, and he says, I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players, as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in a single note. So me and you can hear Miles a couple notes and go, Miles. And
Yeah.
he put it in two words, fragile and pointed. He said Coltrane is slightly undercooked and urgent. So if a music writer that you really have respected and looked up to summarized your sound in a couple words, what two or three words would you feel most he got it? This writer got who the Paul sound.
Wow. Okay. Um I would say, oh, give me 1 second. I want to think about that. Um, I would say my sound could be described as full, um, developed, and beautiful. I don't know. I feel like I'm talking about a wine here.
That's all right. It's nourishing. It's the liquid of life, dude. No, that was really good. It's a difficult question because people, it sort of sounds egotistical, but it's really like the guy the other day, I says, "What words would you say?" And he goes, "I get it." That he was more avant-garde, but it's interesting what people say. I appreciate that. So, one friend of mine says the three T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. Technique, you've learned how to play it. Theory, you definitely know how to tell people what structure. How does one acquire taste?
Well, that takes time and experience. You have to do it. You have to do it over and over and over and over and over again. Um, there's a lot of subtlety in having taste.
Yeah.
The situation that you're playing in, the tempo, the key, the number of musicians on stage. It's only experience, playing gig after gig after gig after gig is going to hone your taste and make it really like this living, breathing thing.
Yeah. McLuhan also says that song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. Any comment?
I absolutely agree. Well, we know, I think it's been proven in research that, so they put a musician in an MRI machine, that it's the same part of the brain. Music and language come from the same area of the brain. So music is almost, when we say it's speaking a language, it really is. It's the same part of your brain that's lighting up. And also recently I heard that, I have a friend who has a Korean girlfriend, and she's been trying to teach him Korean, and the inflections of how they speak, um, they hit pitches. And if a woman were to say the same thing and you hear a man say the same thing, he would hit the same musical notes in the language. It's that deep with their language. It's like they're singing a song and they're all hitting the same rhythms and pitch. So I think it's all very, very much intertwined.
What's more fundamental, music or language?
I'm going to say fundamental, probably music, because you can go anywhere in the world and play something, and I think you will speak some kind of language to somebody. I think if I went and played something really sad and poignant, and here somebody would get it. I think if I went to Africa and played something really sad and poignant, I would be able to communicate that feeling, or China or Russia or whatever. So I'm going to say, yeah, music.
Yeah. I also got to compliment you because I'm just intrigued by your channel and the fact that everybody comes on and says, hit subscribe and do this. It's like, no, you do it with 4 notes and 4 symbols. Cut it down. Be simple. It is I want to tell you one other thing I've observed. One of the greatest political films of all time is The Battle of Algiers by Guido Pontecorvo. I mean, every major filmmaker's on their knees to this film. It is an amazing film. And they asked him, well, what did your film teach people? Because politically, to give you an example, George Bush used it as a training film on how to deal with terrorists. And Black Panthers have used as a training film on how to not be a terrorist, be a revolutionary,
Yeah.
So it's reached that sort of, it's a huge film. It doesn't really teach people how to do anything. And except Gilo was, what does your film teach people to do? And he says, how to make films. So what your YouTube channel is doing is teaching me, my wife, and all the people that watch it about the bass guitar, but it's also teaching us how to make tutorials really good. You don't realize that, do you? It is a teaching, like, here's how to do it the right way, you know?
Wow. I really appreciate that. My greatest hope is that when people see a video on a song or whatever, I just want them to go to the music. I
Yeah,
want them to go to the song and now maybe hear something they didn't hear before, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. And so this is exactly, you have ESP in so many ways. You touched on what the next question is. In 1969, the LA Free Press asked Frank Zappa about mentioning Pauline Oliveros work with sound above the audio and below, creating a mass. And Frank said, not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It produces a sum indifference tone, which happens to be located within the audible frequency range. By combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something so low you couldn't hear it, it yields something in the middle you could hear. Whether or not you liked what you heard in the middle is another question. The concept is brilliant. So can you comment on that sum indifference tone at all?
Wow, that's really, really heavy. Um, I can comment, and it probably won't sound intelligent at all. I will say that there are a lot of different levels beyond what we're hearing and what you're focusing on.
Yeah.
I know this, if I could use an analogy as a teacher, I know that what I present to my students is only one layer of what they're observing.
Yeah.
Um, the way I carry myself, the way I appear to them, the way
Yeah.
I talk to them, the way I hold my bass when I'm in front of them, all those things are being noticed. All the
Yeah.
things that I don't consider being noticed, the way my breath smells,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know it's all being taken in, and we get lost in that hole, especially as bass players. Bass players do this a lot. You put on a recording of something, and you're like, listen to that bass, and that's
Yeah.
all I'm taking in. And
Yeah.
there's a whole world there if you listen really, really, really hard that goes to not only the orchestration, the chords, what instruments are being played, how it's mixed, how you're listening to it. So I think, yeah, it's always a macro kind of thing that we turn into a micro thing. But I hopefully that
No,
I think that's what you're talking about.
that is, and it's what we call that is comprehensive awareness. You get the big picture and you
Mm,
study the patterns. And it's curious how Copeland said the four main elements of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color.
mm.
How do you integrate the four when you're writing a piece of music, a Paul composition? Is there one that stands out, or do you trying to balance all four, or just talk about that relationship of melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color?
Well, there's usually an idea or a central theme that everything kind of supports. And if I get an idea that's based on rhythm, if that's the most important thing, then everything follows that. If it's a melody, everything is going to follow that melody and support that melody. If it's a feeling or a tone, I think in music, it's the cool thing about it is at any time everything can go to supporting that one thing if it's strong enough. If
Yeah,
that makes any sense. So it
makes a lot.
depends on whatever is the moment. What's the most important thing in the moment? Let's support that.
Thelonious Monk said there are no wrong notes. Any comment?
Absolutely. There definitely, the older I get, the more I'm learning that, and I'm embracing that. Somebody said this was really great last night. I can't remember where I heard this. As children, we learn to practice our art like adults,
Yeah.
and as adults, we are learning to practice our arts like children.
That is so Perfect. In fact, my friend Duggo says, Thelonious Monk heard all the notes Charlie Parker heard, but only decided to play some of them.
It's true. Absolutely.
And that's like Miles talking about the space between notes. How do you navigate this need for silence or dynamics in music? It's not what you play all the time, it's what you don't play. Or as George Clinton and Bootsy say, funk is the absence of. How do you do that? I mean, everybody's over Play City nowadays, you know.
Yeah, you have to force yourself. You have to really force yourself. And as a bass player, the first rule you learn in the first lesson is don't stop playing. Don't stop playing, don't stop playing, don't stop playing. So for me, it's about forcing myself. You have to hear space like you hear notes.
Yeah.
And dramatic space will make you sound 100 times better.
Paul, tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh.
Jaco Pastorius, John and Mary.
Nice. You know,
Joy.
What was
pure joy?
Pure joy. What was the motive of the cave artist? And it's interesting that we have documentation of cave art, but we don't have documentation of cave dance or cave music. But just in general, what was their motive, your hunch or your guess?
Wow, that's really heavy. Part of me thinks it was kind of a record. It was kind of the prehistoric version of James was here. You know, scrawling James was here on a bench.
Yeah,
like kids do in school.
Yeah.
And part of it was memory of kind of we want to make this moment last.
Yeah.
We want to preserve this. We want to remember this when it's winter time and we're not happy and we're going through it. I want to look up. It's like a picture, you know. I want to look at that time when this happened and we were happy. Yeah. It's kind of a record, kind of a preservation of a moment.
Yeah. We're doing a movie right now on archiving. Why do people feel they have to archive and save? You know, it's like, well, of course, history teaches us, but isn't the whole point of life is to live in the moment? So if it's to live in the moment, why do you want to record stuff? Just go to the next moment and keep moving. Like Wyndham Lewis actually nailed it all. He said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Conviction. I think conviction as an artist.
Yeah.
I think you learn how to compromise, but as a jazz musician, if the chord is C7, I'm learning what the notes are that I have to play. Later on, if I see a C7 and I want to play D flat, you know, something totally not in the chord, it's my conviction that's going to make it sound like it belongs. If you have conviction, you can make anything artistically. You can make anything work. People will go, "Wow, did you hear what he just did?"
Yeah. You've accomplished a lot. In your accomplishments, how do you rate these three elements, luck, skill, and ambition? What played the biggest role, second and third?
Wow. I'm gonna personal pride has me wanting to say that skill played the first because I worked really hard. But definitely luck played the second. If skill is first, luck played the second. There's a lot of pieces that have to fall together. Ambition, I would say, was the third. I never thought about where music would take me. I just wanted to play good music. I just wanted to find people to play great music with and not like the YouTube thing. I never thought, wow, I'm going to get 100,000 subscribers by this date. I just wanted to do like really good videos, you know?
Yep. T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing our inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Mm. I think my inner dialogue is in a very low kind of Morgan Freeman with an English accent. No, it's it's uh it's a lot of it is music, but I think my inner dialogue, and I found this on the bandstand. I know it's in English. I know messages, and I'm trying to change the kind of messages I give myself on the bandstand. Those
Yeah,
kind of play something better.
yeah,
That sucked. That was good. Why
yeah,
can't you? What are you doing? Why aren't you playing? You know, those kind of things. I know it's like English. I know it's like my voice.
yeah.
My inner dialogue, unfortunately, is me.
Good. Two of my film heroes have a mantra: ignore yourself. Jonas Mika says there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, the great jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. It's a sort of stupid question. I know it's both and it depends, but is art making, music making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle, more you're a vehicle for whatever technology, culture, and environments are dominant?
Wow. I would, when I was younger, I would have said it's more self-expression. But as the older I become, the more I know that it's about letting the saying, letting the muse work through you.
Yeah.
So it's a collection of how I'm being affected and how I can step out of the way. That's the older I get, the more I see it, and we can see it if you look at like Picasso's art, for example. You know, it was self-expression when he was a kid, kind of, and then it grew into this kind of metamorphosis of what is happening when you see his stuff when he was in his 80s. It was like
Yeah.
he was totally a vehicle, and it was just coming through him.
Yeah. Can art making, music making be egoless?
Yes, definitely. Um, I hope to get to that place at some point. But what I said before about it being vulnerable, you have to be absolutely vulnerable, and it's very hard for us, even the 1% of us, the brilliant genius musicians. It's hard to be completely vulnerable, but I absolutely believe that can happen for sure.
Is perception reality?
Mm, that's a heavy question. um I think as an artist, I can frame this as an artistic thing. um yeah, in that moment, yes. Yes, your world, as an artist, what I'm perceiving in that moment, that painting, that measure, that's definitely reality.
Beautiful. Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Yes, I believe at some point, we're going to wake up and there's going to be a great spiritual movement where people are going to start listening to each other and talking to each other again. As impossible as that sounds, I have this deep hope anytime I meet new people, and for the world in general. um I, as far as impossible things, yes, I think about those things. I think it motivates me as an artist too, to believe in impossible things and dreams. And yeah.
Yeah, Paul, if you don't have dreams, your dreams can't come true. But
Agre-
Sun Ra nailed it. He said, the impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change.
Absolutely.
Tell me what you've kind of answered this, but I got to ask it anyway. Tell me one major element of your creativeness that's remained the same and one major element that's changed in the years you've been doing this.
um One thing that's remained the same is a negative, and that's I tend to be hard on myself. I tend to I'm overly critical, but I think that's what a lot of artists tend to carry that. A lot of us are insecure.
Yeah.
So my insecurity has carried with me from day one until now. And one thing that's changed is my ability to control things, or my desire to control things. When you see someone as a young person playing great music, you think that they're planning everything and absolutely executing everything they want to happen. And the older you get, the more you understand the magic of getting out of the way and
Yeah.
letting those creative processes happen and watch them happen and being in that moment. So the control factor is totally different for me now. My goal is to not be in control. My goal is to let it flow, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I'm still hard on myself, man.
Dude, I worked for George Carlin for half a year, and we got a piece of mail, and it said, "I'm trying to get more control over my spontaneity." That's,
It's a great joke.
but Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Definitely connecting with large groups of people. I mean,
Yeah.
when I say to you, I was a shy person. I was very, very shy. I didn't like being in front of people. I That's why I played the bass. I didn't like talking to large groups of people, and I feel like that's one of my strengths now. Is I can stand in front of a large group of people. I can play music comfortably. I can connect. Feel like I'm making a connection with everybody, and I can talk to each person without feeling a sense of dread.
Yeah. Paul, this has been truly enlightening. We've got about 10 more minutes. I really appreciate it. Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when.
Used as motivation.
Yeah.
I think if ever I had a situation where I didn't play well for a musician, or somebody said something about me, or I'm just trying to make lemonade out of lemons here, but I definitely, when you said that, the first thing I thought is, man, if I can motivate myself to really nail something, it will push you. It'll push me as an artist.
Yep. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Mm. I think women are much more in touch with emotions. I think men are much more concerned with what's on the outside and
Yeah.
appearances. Women are much more connected to their feelings, and they are better communicators. I feel my
Yeah.
wife definitely. She's an amazing. She's taught me that women are very empathetic. They communicate on a much higher level than men do. Where we're this kind of appearance based tribe.
A cliche I tend to repeat is women know, men suppose. There's another line I like to probe, but not saying I agree or disagree with it, is you create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into you are what you hate. In fact,
Hmm.
James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So I'm curious your thought on this. I'm not saying you, but you create what you resist, or one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that line?
Oh, absolutely. I think, and you could say, I mean, people say it a lot. You're your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
You're your own worst critic.
Yeah.
The number one hurdle that we always have to overcome is ourselves. And I
Yeah.
was explaining this to somebody the other day. In the artistic community, there's camps, and sometimes there's you think this musician is saying this about me. This musician thinks this about me.
Yeah.
It's always what you think about yourself.
Yeah.
and you're superimposing that on somebody else. So I definitely think, yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
Yeah, subgenius, we say pull the wool over your own eyes.
Hmm.
How do you find peace of mind?
uh, I play music.
Yeah.
But I also try to meditate when I can. I think that gives me a certain level of peace of mind. But I fall back on things that I love, and things that I know and I love. My wife, spending time with my wife gives me peace of mind. Eating something delicious, eating a slice of Fiore's pizza from a mile and a half away. That gives me
Nice.
incredible peace of mind. Watching the Steelers play a football game, that gives me a sense of a peace of mind. So I know my lane,
It
and I
did,
stay in it.
dude. You sound like a happy dude. You play music, you eat pizza, you love your wife. Dang, this is what life's about. It. Okay, so these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a few words.
Hmm.
1, who started it all?
God,
Are we going to make it?
yes,
Where do we put it?
we hold it close.
Nice. Who's cleaning it up? Yeah.
I think no, I think we all have. I think we're all with people. We know who the cleaners are, and we unfortunately expect the cleaners to do it. So
Yeah.
I'm saying my wife, because my wife
Yeah.
always comes to the rescue.
5, is it serious?
It's very serious.
Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely.
On what occasion? That's the Alan Watts. Thank you. This is actually a Marcel Proust question. On what occasion do you lie?
Ooh. Um, when when I when I'm concerned about how it's going to affect someone else on a really deep level. If it's going to hurt somebody else, I
Yeah.
might stretch the truth a little bit.
Yeah.
It's hard to break horrible news. It's
Yeah.
really hard. That would be the only occasion that I would ever stretch the truth.
Yeah. That's when they asked Tom Waits on what occasion do you lie? He says, I didn't know I needed an occasion. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Wow. I would say you're good enough. You're smart enough. People like you, and yeah, I would self-affirm myself. I would let
Yeah.
myself know, listen, you're worth it. You're worth
Yeah.
it. You can be great. So don't ever think that you can't be.
Yeah. Should toilet paper come off the roll over or under?
Over, over, always.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Hmm. A work in progress.
They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Chocolate milk.
Oh, what a smell. I love it. Taste too. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Wow. Um, I would this is like post-mortem.
Not
Like
necessarily, but you can again, you can put it in the context you want while you're alive or when you're dead, either way.
um I would say I would want it to be displayed in the neighborhood that I grew up in. There's a neighborhood in town called East Liberty. I grew up there and I went to school in that neighborhood, middle school and high school. I would want it to be in a park, and I would want it to be made out of wood, biodegradable wood, so that
Nice.
eventually it would become a part of the earth.
That's it. Paul, tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Hmm, that's really interesting. Um, wow. Something good I never had and never want. Um, I would say perfect pitch.
Whoa, that's a good that you answered it well. Perfect
Yeah,
pitch.
I would never want perfect. That's amazing, an amazing ability, but I would
Yeah,
never want it because it would kind of ruin some of my musical experiences.
yeah.
And I like that I did it the old-fashioned way and learned relative pitch.
Really good. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
I'm sorry.
We'll be sorry. That's what this is all about. Have fun.
Ah, my God, I would close my eyes and my mouth.
Close eyes and mouth. That's a good answer. Man, I'm glad you got such a laugh. I always know these go well if either me or the person tear up or they really laugh hysterically. That's really you don't know how people my wife hates when I ask people that question, and some people get like they almost get pissed at me. And it's really, you would love the guy I got that question from. He used to hang out on the Venice boardwalk, and he was like a mentor to me because he was in New York and he hung out with Billie Holiday and Charles Mingus. And he was just a normal dude, but he just had this root in one night when he was going into the army. And I think the question's a metaphor for life. We're in a
Uh-huh.
background, and he taught me that. So I asked it. But one night, early in his life, he's going into the army and he's hanging out at this bar, and Billie Holiday, he says, I'm going to the army tomorrow. And Billy says, how about a quickie? Now, I mean, some people would go, shit, that's a horror sledge. Like, if I could make love to Billie Holiday, I mean, what an experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Al contributed that question to my survey. So I'm always grateful. I mean, at least you can appreciate the background of the question.
For sure.
Okay, three more here. What cultural you see developing today that inspires you?
Can you say that again? You broke up a little bit.
Yeah. What is the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Wow. Specifically with young people, um, the support that they give each other.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, if you didn't have the right pair of shoes on, or if your hair wasn't right, you were going to get bullied. People
Yeah.
were going to talk about you and make you feel like crap. In one instance, I'll never forget. Here's something that traumatized me. I remember I got some brand new tennis shoes, beautiful white, sparkling, and there was a group of 3 or 4 kids, and they waited behind this doorway for me to walk through the doorway. And when I did, they all stomped on my shoes
Oh
because they
my
were
God.
they were so beautiful and clean and white. That I cannot see that happening today. Kids
Yeah.
support one another in a way I wish we could have had that kind of support. If a kid has a disability, I've seen kids come into our school and the other kids rally around them.
Yeah.
Um, uh, you know, Gender issues, LGBT kids,
Yeah.
um, racial issues, like just where I am, these kids are so supportive of one another. And that gives me a lot of hope moving forward. It's really inspiring to see.
Super cool. Thornton Wilder said in 1928, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time.
Mm.
Paul, you've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Wow. I want to feel like I'm worth something
Yeah.
on the deepest level. I want to feel like some kind of significance.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't mean like super famous significance. I want to feel like I left something. That people look at me and hear me and go, man, he could play.
Yeah.
Man, he knows, he knows what he's talking about. I want to feel like I want to be in our language, jazz lingo. I want to be one of the cats, man.
Yeah.
I want to feel like I'm worth something.
Yeah.
That's on the deepest level. It's just me kind of struggling to just be valid.
Yeah. Yeah. That one video of yours where you run through the 10 great jazz bass players and tell each personality their sound in a couple notes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, my wife's a pro jazz singer. She's played Carnegie Hall. We watched that together and it was like, what an education, because it was like there in our face, the exact, you felt what Slam Stewart or what Ray Brown did in that few moments, and you got a feel for it.
Oh,
So,
thanks.
yeah. What gives you the most optimism?
Wow. This might sound silly. Waking up in the morning. I try to live my life where today could be better than the last day was. And so getting up every morning, it feels like kind of a renewed, and with my, I have MS. So there's always this kind of in the back of my head, this feeling of okay, will I be able to get up and do regular things like everybody else? So there's this new kind of getting up in the morning is just this, let's make this a masterpiece today.
Yeah.
So that gives me waking up, getting out of bed. That's my source of optimism.
Yeah. It's well put, Paul, because I thought, again, the video you did on MS was so revealing and so important because it humanized you. You're not just this amazing, smart bass player and teacher, but you're a human being and you're dealing with something. And hey, I want you people to know what I'm dealing with. It was beautiful. So,
Thanks.
the first question is, what's the best thing for a human being? Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being. And the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he says, other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person. Now, I wanted to say, if you don't have to run, I'd love to talk bass players for a few minutes. But if you have to
Of course.
run,
No, please, let's talk.
so that's sort of officially where the interview ends. But it was like, this guy, I just dying to know, because, well, the first thing I wanted to tell you was this great drummer who played with Charlie Hayden and Billie Holiday. I forgot his name, but anyways, I asked him this question. When they amplified the bass in jazz, did drumming lose all its subtlety? Because the drummer had to hit harder to be heard. And he said a funny line. He said, you can brush me off and stick me up. And it was, he was one of those masters with the brushes.
Yeah.
So you got to sort of admit that there was some subtlety lost once they amplified it. And I didn't even know till I just stumbled into your Mount Montgomery video that he could have been one of the first to plug in, And was that plugging in? You said Fender, but was that plugging in with the stand-up?
No. Well, there were early versions of pickups that you could amplify a double bass, an upright bass,
Right.
but his innovation was he was the first to record with a bass guitar.
Right.
Like he was really the first, not the first to play it, but the first to put it on wax
But
and
who would
embrace
be
it.
who's usually credited for maybe being the first double or upright bass player amplified?
Oh my gosh. Well, that goes back a long, long time, and I can't give you a name, but it was probably so Lionel Hampton, who was the first to use the bass guitar, he
Yeah.
was on the cutting edge. And
Yeah.
for during that time, it was more of a gimmick. It was a
Yeah.
more of a check out this new thing. So he was like one of the first band leaders. We can look to him and say it was probably the first amplified bass player was with Lionel Hampton
Yeah.
because he was kind of chasing that gimmick at that point.
Yeah.
So I couldn't tell you who the bassist was, but it does go back as
Yeah.
far as the 40s.
Now to the question, do you
Yeah.
feel that could be kind of true that when they amplified the bass, that diminished the subtlety of jazz drumming?
Sort of. Here's my take on this. It wasn't just the amplified bass. It was the really the development and the popularity of rock music.
Right.
And how that started coming into what people wanted to hear and the
Yeah.
energy and the volume of it. And that made everything get louder.
Yeah.
Everything had to get louder. And drummers, you know. And
Yeah.
when you listen to those records from the early 60s, you hear the explosiveness coming. I mean, Art Blakey was a loud drummer. He had a lot of subtlety, but he played loud, you know.
That's true. Very well put.
Tony Williams, explosive drummer. And at that point, if you saw Miles Davis, if you saw the great quintet, Ron Carter always had a microphone on the bass, and Tony
Got it.
Williams was playing loud and explosive. Elvin Jones, like, you know, I think rock music though played more of a part in the volumes getting louder than the amplification really did. If anything, if you talk to somebody like Ron Carter, he'll tell you that amplification was good because now there were subtleties of the bass instrument
Then you could hear their sound.
that could come to the fore. And in a perfect world, you have a really nice, tasty, subtle drummer, but also a bass player where you can hear everything they're playing too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. That's right out of McLuhan. Everything we invent has services and disservices, and it's how you flip them and integrate them. It's not how you go, oh. But again, we have personal taste because, you know, Thundercat. Well, no, I was going to say one other thing to bring up Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa said the only what do you think of jazz rock fusion? He says the only fusion I see is between the musician and the cash box, because what he was inventing jazz rock fusion with Hot Rats in a silent way in Hot Rats, and actually one side of Uncle Meat. That was in the invention of, but basically he was saying, yeah, if you put a rock beat to jazz, then you can sell it, you know. I mean, will admit it. I started with Herbie Hancock, you know. Well, now I can't think of the name of the song. You know,
what is it? Headhunters?
Headhunters, Chameleon. And then we went, oh, if that's jazz, we like it. Well, I knew I was hearing jazz by my parents playing American musicals around the house forever, but I didn't realize that there was jazz elements. But then, you know, I get into Frank Zappa deeply, and then we hear people like Thundercat. Have you ever heard Thundercat talking about Zappa? He says, you know, he's like, he cloned the song Teenage Wind. He says, so I'm curious if you've ever thought of exploring the bass players of Zappa, or have you ever listened to Zappa much?
Yes. So I've listened to Zappa a little. I really want to get into it more. I had a friend when I was in college who sat me down. And like, this is a handful of experiences, but this guy sat me down. He said, have you ever checked out Frank Zappa? And I said, no. So he sat me down and we literally listened to Joe's Garage from
Wow, you started
from
with Joe's, yeah.
front to the end,
Yeah,
like from the beginning to the
yeah,
end, like
yeah,
listening to that and it's blowing my mind.
yeah,
And I haven't, I've always wanted to revisit Zappa, and I would love actually some suggestions because I know that you were
yeah,
closely associated with Frank Zappa. I would definitely love to do a deep dive
yeah.
on it.
Yeah, I want to turn you on to Tyler Bartram because he does these tutorials on Frank, and you two
Mhm.
have to talk. He's watched your channel, and there it's an interesting thing. I mean, I would just say start with Grand Wazoo and Waka Jawaka. Those are sort of his known two jazz, big band jazz albums.
Okay.
They're really sweet, but he's got Hot Rats has got like chamber rock, which is very jazz. It's uh really great bass player. I think it's the bass player John Guerin. Is that his name?
Yeah,
G-U-E?
no, no, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's playing on it too. But the one track that I think you should just go to and listen to and maybe do one of your 8-minute tutorials on is called The Ocean is the Ultimate Solution.
Wow.
And yeah, The Ocean is the Ultimate Solution is an instrumental. It's just a jam song in the big picture. But you can tell what Frank's doing is he's taking his solos out of his songs, play the head, play the rock guitar solo, then play, and he takes a solo out and releases it as another song because he's composing on the spot.
Yeah.
And other people think, I wish I could do that. But Frank knew I can do that. That's like Steely Dan used to open for Frank and they go, dude, we have to play the music like it is on our records. Why don't you? And he says, I don't want to, he was his own person. But Patrick O'Hearn's audition to be a bass player in Frank's band is basically what I heard is Ocean is the Ultimate Solution. And there's there's bass in The Ocean is the Ultimate Solution. It's just basically power trio. Because the other one would be Eccentrical Force, which is Jack, Bruce, Jim Gordon, and Frank. And power trio.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, not bad having Jack Bruce play with you. Or Jim Gordon, he just passed away.
Yeah.
Another bass player I'm curious your thoughts on is Jamal Takuma when he
Oh,
played with
Jamaluddin.
Jamaluddin, when he
Oh,
played with Ornette. Yeah.
heavy, heavy, heavy. He's been on my list for some time. I want to do at some point, I'm going
Yeah.
to do a video about Jamaluddin. Incredible, incredible sound,
Yeah.
feeling, groove, a force. And when you
Yeah.
see him, I follow him on Instagram.
Oh yeah.
He's on Instagram. His whole presentation, like the way he dresses, the fashion, like he's got this whole encompassing vibe. It's incredible. He's a force, man. He's a force.
Yeah. And the last guy, I mean, we could go on forever now, but the last guy is I had to tell you my encounter with Charlie Hayden because I think he's really a special player. But dude came out of hillbilly Appalachian, the backwoods. And I went up to him once and I said, in the middle of an Ornette Coleman song, you play an old folk song. And I goes, what's the name of that? And he goes, that's Old Joe Clark. A boom, 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 a boom, 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 boom. I
Yeah.
said, who wrote it? He goes, nobody wrote it. which is such an amazing answer in the history of music because somebody wrote it, but did they notate it and pass it down, or did they?
Right.
It's just like the Waters of March, the Brazilian song. It was just passed down and passed down and passed down, and then somebody claims the publishing on their arrangement, so they get, quote, the writing credit.
Yep.
So it is a beautiful thing because you wonder who was the first person who ever played that riff,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Charlie is one of the absolute greats. And I was so happy that video you were talking about, I had to put him on there because he's one of my
Yeah.
biggest influences.
Yeah.
I have a personal Charlie story. So I'd always been a fan of his, and there was a time where he was traveling around in the '90s when I was in college. He was going around the country performing the Liberation Orchestra music,
Oh, I know that well.
and he was doing a thing where he would just travel and local musicians would put the ensemble together and he would conduct.
Oh, nice.
So he came to Pittsburgh for a jazz festival, and my college uh, director guy, jazz director, put a group of musicians together to perform that music, and I got to play bass. And he he came over and he went through the rehearsal. And this was the time when his balance was really, I mean, he had to wear earplugs. It started to really be affected. I don't know if you've ever seen later in his life, he had to perform with plexiglass around him
Yeah.
because his balance was really sensitive. But he came over to me. He said, "Okay, on this last number, I might play a bass solo. If that's cool, I'll come over and just take your bass and play a bass solo at the end." I said, "Of course, that'd be great." So he came, and I had a piece of crap bass at the time, a piece of crap. And he came over and he made it sound amazing. He sounded like Charlie Hayden, played this incredible solo. And afterwards he handed it to me, and he looked it up and down, and he looked me right in the eye. He said, "Man, you need to get a good instrument. It'll inspire you." He said, "It'll inspire you." Like
Nice.
really seriously, and then walked away. And so I'll never forget when Charlie Hayden played my bass. He was one of the masters. There's nobody. It's hard to do as a bass player. That same thing you're talking about, when somebody plays 2 or 3 notes,
Yeah.
usually takes a few more notes as a bass player to figure it out.
Yeah.
But literally, when Charlie played 2 notes, you knew it was Charlie,
Oh,
and he
yeah.
was this big, like in the music. That Ornette stuff, he plays it so geniusly, like
Yeah.
nobody like him.
Yeah. Totally agree. And was fortunate to see him many times over the years, and
Mhm.
really fell in love with Soap Suds. I think it's a Charlie Hayden album where there's a duet of him and Ornette, just 2 people
Mm.
playing the Mary Hartman TV theme song.
Oh my God, I haven't heard that. Oh, I have to look that
Yeah,
up.
I'm gonna look it up right when
Oh
we
my
end,
God.
because I love to hear it, because it's so, when you can tell that he came from Appalachian hillbilly music. You can tell that, but he's playing avant-garde jazz. He's
Mhm.
pissing Mingus and oh, and then I had to tell you this one too about Flea, because I weaned John Frusciante in my living room when he was 16. I was lucky to have him come over and we'd play music, and I turned him on to P-Funk and all this stuff.
Wow.
And he just said on 60 Minutes a couple of weeks ago, "I'm just backing up Flea. I'm just a backup musician." And I went up to Flea early in the Peppers career, and I goes, "There's only 3 bass players on earth, you, Bootsy, and Jocko." And he goes, "You left Mingus out."
That's all.
That to me was so cool, because I saw Ornette play at UCLA, and Flea came out as a guest,
Wow.
and it was just to lure
Wow.
kids. It was like Flea could give his name to, well, Flea's going to be there, and Flea didn't do anything stupid, or he just played real bass for Ornette. He didn't, like, go out of his means. So, I'm just curious, like, you haven't done Flea, you haven't done Thundercat. Are there any young dudes that really stand out for you? Because you are, to me, rooted in the essentials. Anybody can go start exploring the new people. Like, I'm obsessed with Domi a little. Have you ever watched Domi
Oh my,
uh,
unbelievable.
play
Unbelievable.
Flintstones? I mean, she is doing Art Tatum, Joe Zawinul, and she knows how to put space, but it's way too many notes when she's playing with her drummer. It's like, come on. And, same with Thundercat. I mean, I can take him a little, but it's too many notes. And then Mono Neon, I love him because 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute. And I know your attention span is 1 minute. And then he leaves his manifesto up for about 20 seconds.
Yes, yes, totally.
But I mean, I've touched on a few. Are there any, because there's so many, are there any that really stand out for you that are young?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
was actually gonna say Mono Neon is out of all of the young bassists that I've heard,
yeah,
he is truly remarkable.
yeah,
He and it's not just all flash.
no,
There's so much substance to what he's doing, and he has this unabashed sense of this is who I am. And
exactly.
the thing that impressed me the most before he got like super popular, I was watching his videos and pausing to read that manifesto, and this is a fully developed artist who is
Yeah,
saying, "This is who I am.
yeah,
These are the rules I'm going to live by.
yeah,
Take it or leave it."
yeah,
Like, I love that. I
yeah.
love that so much, and he's just amazing. And it's the weirdest. Can you imagine going to a gig with a rainbow colored ski mask, a
But
sock
that's
over
the
your
beauty
instrument? You're
of,
wearing orange and green and
yeah,
fluorescent, and he is just like, "This is who I am."
yeah,
Take it or leave it. That's so much vulnerability and courage
yeah,
to
both,
do that.
yeah,
It's just amazing to
yeah.
me, and he's got the goods.
And
Usually
he's got, yeah,
when we see stuff like that, it's to kind of cover up the fact that this is kind of
yeah,
okay. I want
yeah,
you to check the other stuff. He has the goods. It's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
I'm
he's bad.
curious. Even when he plays with Schofield and all that, it's like, no, it doesn't work. There's something about changing music now to this 1 minute. Like I have a pro musician in New York. I says, what if I send you a clip, how many seconds are you literally going to listen to it? And I says, is it, and I said to people, 30 seconds. And he says, the industry standard is 10 seconds. I,
Mm.
as an old person right now, an elder, I'm 70, I'm like 3 seconds. I'm out of here. I'm sorry. It's not fair. I miss a lot. But, in one other baseball, I'm sorry it goes on, but I'm curious, is Joe Dart Wolfpack.
Oh yeah, he's really good. He's got a unique thing as well. Not as strong in my opinion as Mono Neon, but he's got a really. There's a bunch. He would fall in my opinion, he would fall in the same category as um the guy from Snarky Puppy,
Yeah.
uh, who's also very good. Why is his name escaping me right now?
I know Snarky Puppy is a big problem with me too, because I did a jazz film. I do jazz films every year at festival,
Uh,
and this big hotshot saxophonist came, and we're talking. I says, "Oh, what do you do?" I play sax. I go, "Oh, blah, blah." I says, and I just use them as like a test. Well, what do you think of Snarky Puppy? And he goes, "Yeah, they're okay." And he says, I taught them all. I was their teacher. And it was like, he's proud of them. And I mean, when I hear him and my friends go, "You've got to hear this." I says, we already heard that. It's
yeah,
Return to Forever or whatever.
yeah,
But, it's again what you said earlier on. You absorb your influence, then you abandon them. But good luck. I mean, Frank Zappa was a Spike Jones, Edgar Varese wannabe with a little Johnny Guitar Watson and Igor Stravinsky thrown in. But
yeah,
he did sort of invent a new kind of music, theatrical rock, and then he satirized his own new invention. That's the depth he got into. But there's so many. But see, the thing with Wolfpack that gets me is it goes to the roots of another person I'm curious and I encourage you to do is George Porter. Because to me, the roots of funk is so much the meters. Like
hmm
Just Kiss My Baby has so much space. I mean, have you seen the video when Flea had his birthday in a parking lot in front of his music school? And he's got Corey Henry on organ. He's got Fish on drums. he's got the bass player for Fishbone singing, and they're playing Meters songs
Oh
with
my
a
God,
whole.
no.
It's on YouTube, and
Okay.
Johnny comes out and plays the guitar solo, and it's not a million notes. It's like fucking Leo Nascitelli. It's like, don't overplay, please.
That's
And
amazing. No.
you know, and I think the Meters, I think there's so many people that I'm sure are on your list that you should do, and you do, but the beauty of you is you stay focused sort of on jazz. But then when you go the Illinois bass, you know, and then when you even have the courage to go into yacht rock. And like the Doobie Brothers, which Zappa made fun of the Doobie Brothers, but they have some of the great funk. We don't realize there's funk in there. You
No,
know,
there's good. They did some good music, man. And Tyron, I want to do a video about Tyran. Nobody ever really talked about him. I feel
yeah,
like he needs to be recognized by people.
yeah, yeah. But it is endless, and Bootsy too. I mean, I love Bootsy playing with James Brown, and you know all that too. So keep up what you're doing, Paul. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Jerry. It's really, really my pleasure.
And if you ever come out to LA, let's hang out. It'd be a pleasure.
Definitely. You got it.
I'll hit the end broadcast button, but I hope this never ends and we can keep funking out forever and ever.
Stay in touch, my friend.
All right.
Thanks.